Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome back to the stage Concordia's Hannah LeCount and United States Senator Chris Coons.
Right, Senator, please.
Thank you.
Welcome everyone to the final conversation on the second day of the 2025 Concordia Annual Summit. Such a pleasure to be seated here with Senator Chris Coons, who just, for those of you who saw it, provided a really fantastic insight into U.S.-Africa trade investments on the studio stage upstairs for our members. Right now, we get to talk about U.S. investments, American competitiveness, and just how to ensure that we are advancing defense and innovation here in the U.S. So we're going to start with that softball question, easiest piece ever. How do we advance investments into the U.S.? Where can we spur innovation and national security, especially amid competition with China?
Well, the most important technological competition of this century is around the development and deployment of artificial intelligence. That's going to require massive amounts of energy. It's going to require our protecting the most critical components required to make advances in AI, which are significant advances in chips and chip technology. It also requires the workforce. A small number of truly brilliant, cutting-edge people, talent, will be decisive in this fight. And in my view, what the administration is doing right now is exactly the wrong thing in terms of sending a strong negative signal about your ability to come here, to learn here, to stay here, and to grow a business here. I do think that there's some positive bipartisan interest in reducing barriers to energy by permitting reform, by facilitating investment. And there is more U.S. investment in artificial intelligence than, frankly, in any other field. And we are being advantaged by the fact that we have the deepest, most liquid capital markets in the world. And so, assuming we're able to win the race to develop and deploy AI, that will have huge consequences for us, not just in defense and security, but in everything from agriculture to biology, public health, and clean water.
Of course. But it sounds like even if you create the enabling environment, absent the human capital, it's, in your opinion, not going to lead us to the path of victory.
Well, if you look at the folks who were responsible for the biggest advances at the dawn of the digital age, a significant number of them were either recent immigrants or first-generation Americans. This has long been true. It's part of the secret sauce of what has made America America, is that wave after wave of immigrants came here seeking opportunity, and they are particularly concentrated in high technology and in cutting-edge developments. Militating against that or pushing against that, in the recent development of DeepSeek, which was a competitive cutting-edge AI platform by the Chinese, virtually none of the core developers of DeepSeek had studied in the United States. They are developing an indigenous, competitive talent pool that is going to make it a more and more difficult competition. I think the answer for us in terms of defense and these critical technologies is to partner even more closely with our allies. I led a bipartisan delegation to Australia in August. We went to the U.S.-Australia Leadership Dialogue in Adelaide. And the core focus was AUKUS, the U.S.-Australia, United Kingdom nuclear-powered submarine partnership. But they're doing remarkable cutting-edge work in quantum computing, in artificial intelligence, in autonomous drones, undersea and surface drones. And a country like Australia can either come closer to us or farther from us. Yesterday, I met with the president of South Korea. If we genuinely embrace and deepen our technology partnerships with Korea, with Japan, with Taiwan, with Australia, with the United Kingdom, with Canada, with the EU, with Mexico, we will win any global competition. But the current tariff policies of the administration are puzzling many of our closest allies and causing some very real distance between the U.S. and our partners.
I want to politely ask for commentary, perhaps on some of the ways that we engage with our allies. Of course, Concordia takes place alongside the UN General Assembly. President Trump addressed the UN today.
Indeed he did.
I will provide a quote. "I'm really good at this stuff." And then there's a follow-on that is less positive about other pieces. But I'm just curious your thoughts on how we can, as a country, continue to be an allied partner. What are some of the things that we can be doing to support and ensure that we're working with our allies and not alienating?
Well, look, President Trump has taken an approach to economic policy that seems to put trade in material goods rather than services higher in his hierarchy, and is willing to use tools of tariffs of widely ranging amounts, intensity, and seriousness to go after any partner, whether it's Brazil or Taiwan, Japan, the Philippines, or competitor, whether it's the PRC or Russia. And so that has led to some genuine unpredictability and some puzzlement on the part of countries with whom we have free trade agreements, with whom we have decades-long security partnerships or even alliances. And so to be a good and reliable partner, I think, as the president put it, to be really good at this stuff requires predictability. And when we fail to show predictability, reliability as a security partner, an economic partner, allies and partners will hedge, and that will create openings. I see real value in the United Nations system. I'm not sure our president does. The Chinese see real value in the United Nations system. I fully recognize it needs reforms. It can and should be more efficient. But we designed it and developed it and funded it back at its launch and its beginning in partnership with our closest allies in the aftermath of the Second World War to try and prevent future wars. It does a huge amount globally in terms of standard setting and norm setting. And I think the United States benefits from a healthy and successful United Nations. And so for us to withdraw or to defund the UN, I think will actually redound to China's benefit, not to ours.
In keeping and thinking about how to ensure that America has its benefits protected and looked after, you've been a champion of some domestic policies looking at things like the CHIPS and EPIC Act. I'm curious if you could apply that model of public-private partnerships and investment at the state level to draw investment and lift up technical capabilities, building out workforce pipelines. Yes. Are there other sectors or industries that you would apply it to outside of?
When you say at the state level, do you mean like the subnational, like American states?
Yes, thank you, subnational. Level? So, Arizona, Colorado.
Sure. Little Delaware.
Let me list some states for you, please. Little Delaware, no.
Look, industrial policy is something that 20 years ago was sharply contested between the political parties. It was not seen as an appropriate role for the federal government to be interfering in the marketplace. As our competitors have done more and more of it, it was particularly first in the area of semiconductor chips, and because of the vulnerability of Taiwan and the very central role globally that Taiwan plays in the design and manufacture of semiconductor chips, that in a bipartisan effort under the previous administration, Republican and Democratic members of Congress came together and passed a very strong bill to significantly increase U.S. government investment in the chip sector to then draw a significant multiple of that. One of the efforts that I championed that has helped Delaware but also helped nationally, the National Institute for Innovation in the manufacturing of biopharmaceuticals is headquartered at the University of Delaware. It is one of 17 national institutes for innovation in manufacturing. I think this is a great opportunity at the state and federal level for partnership between academic research, U.S. national laboratories, private companies, which in these centers typically invest multiples of the public sector, and in identified segments. So whether it's additive manufacturing, that institute's in Youngstown, Ohio, wide bandgap semiconductors, that's in North Carolina. It's in bioengineering and bioengineered materials for national defense applications, that's in New Hampshire. Lightweighting materials, advanced composites, that's for automotive and armored vehicles, that's in Detroit. There's a whole constellation of these institutes. It's directly copied off a German model, where Germany for decades was having federally funded basic science and then applied science and manufacturing and workforce training in institutes all over the country. If you looked at Germany 25 years ago, they had twice the percentage of their GDP in manufacturing as the United States, and they were winning the competition for advanced manufacturing. I recognize we'll never go back to the days of Laverne and Shirley where, sorry, I may be the only person here who gets that reference, but where there's millions of people working in basic manufacturing. But we can and should compete for advanced manufacturing because that's where some of the most sophisticated technology is going to be applied. And after the pandemic, we've realized that our supply chains are too attenuated and we are too vulnerable in key technologies. So one of the sectors I just pointed to, biopharmaceuticals, but there's a dozen others where there are already existing institutes in states that are nodes of national networks of innovation.
And I love to hear about those 17 different institutes. It's definitely worth looking into. So those seem like great long-term as well as short-term models for investment, but also, again, talent formation, competitiveness. What do you believe we will need to improve on beyond those, or going deeper into them perhaps, to ensure that continued growth and competitiveness?
One aspect of this that I haven't touched on is protecting intellectual property.
Okay.
The United States, all the way back to our Constitution, has recognized and protected innovations, inventions with things called patents, which are a limited, it gives you a monopoly for a defined period of time in exchange for sharing the core innovation and invention so that everybody else can build on it. We were one of the strongest patent systems in the world for years, but it has recently been weakened both by legislation and by action in specialized courts. I've worked in a bipartisan way with Senator Tillis in the last couple of Congresses to try and strengthen our patent system and strengthen our trade secrets. One of my first big bills with Senator Orrin Hatch of blessed memory was about protecting trade secrets, because one of the main means by which the PRC has competed with the United States in recent decades has been by, frankly, stealing some of our inventions and innovations. That's much less the case today. Patent law and patent defense in China has gotten stronger as they have become the source of invention and innovation. But we need to continue to invest in basic science, to make it easier for business to invest in applied science and in invention, and then federally to protect inventions and intellectual property, both through having good licensing regimes and by having a fully functioning patent and trademark office. I know this has gotten a little nerdy, but if you're asking about the whole ecosystem of innovation that is critical to our competitiveness globally,
you have to create the demand.
Great workforce, great investment, partnership between national and state, between the private sector and the public sector, and then protecting our most cutting-edge inventions.
And that's a bill or policy you're currently working towards?
Yes.
Yes.
I have several different bills, Prevail, Para, which fix particular problems in patenting. We need to modernize our trademark and copyright systems. But frankly, the most simple thing, and I think easy for folks to access, is we need to invest in science. Huge cuts to NIH, to CDC, to medical research, delegitimizing the very deep and broadly accepted science underlying vaccines. All of that is very harmful to American public health and to invention and innovation here. So whether it's the National Science Foundation or NASA, the NIH or CDC, defunding federal partnership and investment in R&D is a very bad idea for the future of the United States as a competitive nation.
That makes sense to me. I'm curious how you, where the argument is then that you're facing that you feel is the most cognizant towards that, because the connection of making America first, right, is the bill of the day, and that makes sense. So where's the disconnect in your mind?
I frankly can't find, I don't think there is a rational national security or competitiveness argument for defunding federal research. Look, you can look at any entity, any business, any agency, and find 5% or 10% that maybe could
Savings.
be tightened, could
Absolutely.
be streamlined, could be procured more efficiently. But to lay off half of the staff and defund half of the projects, I don't think there's any strategic argument for doing so in organizations like NIST or the NSF or NIH that have long been considered world-leading enterprises. And frankly, the war on universities and on university research of the last year, I think, is also putting culture wars over making us better prepared for deterring actual wars.
Well, fascinating. I know I could pick your brain for many more minutes, but there is a blinking red light in front of us. And so I just want to say thank you so much for presenting your views and really laying out the ground for why public-private partnerships matter more than ever today and tomorrow, and why it's critical that these disparate models are connected and talking through to build that ecosystem that you think is so critical. So thank you, Senator. We appreciate it. Have a great day.
Thank you.